Hey! I just got back from a 6-day trip driving through the Tanzanian bush in my Series I Land Rover Pinky. Come along with me. Full disclaimer, this is not professionally filmed and I'm aware I have a lot to work on. I even forgot to film anything for YouTube for day one, partly because I was feeling like shit when I started this trip, but I live and breathe for Landy trips, so I was definitely going. If you want to see bits from day one, there's a video up on my Insta page. I was very much enjoying myself on this trip rather than taking content. So, starting from day 2, we travelled very deep into the bush. It was quite gnarly and the tracks were quite narrow, so we got thwacked a lot by sticks and branches, and our clothes were getting ripped by thorns. I also had my windscreen completely down with no sidebars, so we had no cover whatsoever. I was hiding under my pink Maasai shuka using it as a cover. We got lost a few times as we really were in the middle of nowhere, but that's all part of the adventure and I love it. By 3 PM we reached a stretch of open plain, which was pure bliss, and we found somewhere to stop for a late lunch before heading on to our second camp spot of the trip. Day 3 started on the plains and we saw a lot of different landscapes. This was our second longest day, travelling 111 kilometres. Sometimes we were on open plains, sometimes it looked like we were driving on the moon, and other times we were on deep orange sand. We passed through lots of Maasai villages, big and small. We saw the Maasai tending to their goats and cows and filling up their water containers at the village pump. Every so often we took breaks for someone to assess the damage in their car. Pinky never had an issue though. In every village we saw donkeys being put to work. They can carry 2 20-litre jerry cans of water and often do round trips of 10 to 20 kilometres. At one of the bigger villages, one of the cars had to change a tube, so we were there for quite a while and I spoke to the Maasai and bought some necklaces off them. One guy spoke particularly good English and was explaining who his daughters were. There was a small shop where we bought some snacks and mugs that were made in China, which we found hilarious. Even in the middle of nowhere in Maasailand, they have items made from China. After lunch, we travelled further towards Tarangire. We spent a good hour on a very long straight road to cover some ground, until turning off and going back through the bush for a bit. We took a few wrong turns as we were trying to find a shortcut up to where we wanted to camp. It was great to see the different landscapes and different villages. This was probably my favourite day of the trip because it was fascinating seeing how the Maasai live and what they had in their villages, such as most villages have fences made from acacia thorns to protect them and their cattle from predators like lions. At around 5 o'clock we popped out onto a vast open plain and found a nice camp spot on the edge of the plain. Getting into camp is a free-for-all when finding your camp spot, so we always try and get ourselves near the front of the convoy near the end of the day. I had an actual shower at this camp spot using a shower that my father-in-law has fitted on his Landy, which I definitely need to copy. It was very windy as we didn't have much bush or tree cover, which made cooking particularly hard on this night, but we still managed to cook a prawn curry with chapatis and poppadoms, which was delicious. Campfire food always tastes better in my opinion. I woke up early on day 4, so I got to enjoy the sunrise. There were even a few giraffes just by our camp in the morning. We had delicious bacon butties for breakfast, my fave. Of course we did a mandatory lineup before we set off. Today we were heading into Tarangire National Park, travelling 104 kilometres. We travelled on some great roads today, which gave Pinky a few tests. The soil colour changed constantly throughout this day, which was really interesting. Can you tell I did geography at uni? We passed loads of herds of cows with their Maasai owners. Traditionally they were nomadic, meaning they moved around the country with the cattle, so there were lots of grazing options, but modern challenges have forced many to settle, which has led to land degradation and a lack of grazing opportunities for their cattle, so they often have to travel around in the day looking for areas they can graze. We stopped for a quick lunch under an acacia tree before making our way to the highway. We were a bit behind on our route plan from the day before, so we did a long stretch on the main highway to cover some ground to get to the Tarangire National Park gate. These big highways aren't tarmac, but they are the main routes the truckers use between the major cities. Only around 32% of roads are tarmac in Tanzania, compared to over 95% in the UK. One thing that is great about these roads though is that they are so straight. We did a quick final stop at a village to fuel up and get some water before getting to the Tarangire gate. We got our permission to enter and picked up a ranger who escorted us to where we could camp. We saw giant termite hills. I've never seen them so big, they were maybe 2 Land Rovers high. We also saw some zebras and a few elephants. Our camp spot was by a dried up dam, but we did see some elephants when we arrived in camp, as well as some mongooses and a massive python in the tree above us. Anyone that knows me knows that I absolutely hate snakes, so I made sure that my tent was very, very far away from that tree. We had a nice sundowners by the fire and then had a barbecue feast. We had beef fillet chicken and sausages with potatoes and onions. I always think food cooked on a campfire is so good. The python started to move just as we were going to bed and I was praying that it stayed up in the tree overnight. Waking up in Tarangire on day 5 was brilliant. There was a lovely sunrise and we had bacon butties again cooked in our karae. Today we were travelling up through Tarangire to the north and then up to Loch Sally, so it was our longest day, driving 121 kilometres. We checked out one of the dams which had water just after our camp and saw an amazing hide in the tree. We saw a few zebras but not too much other wildlife, as the south of Tarangire is very vast and empty. We travelled for a good hour across the plain. The tracks were so deep that the car could just follow the road without me having to touch the steering wheel, which was quite cool. These particular roads were very bad to drive on because when they are wet, the elephants walk along them and then they dry with their massive foot indents still there, making it incredibly bumpy. Luckily, the tsetse flies weren't too bad on this trip, as last year in Ruaha they were awful and Tarangire is known for tsetse flies. We headed up to Silali Swamp. We saw some zebra, elephants and ostrich along the way. At one point we drove on a road in front of a lodge and they didn't seem too happy. They came racing down in their car to tell us to turn around and go a different way, but the funny thing was we had to drive back past the lodge to go the different way. It took us 4 hours to get up to the swamps from leaving camp. Tarangire is about 100 kilometres from north to south. We eventually reached the swamps around 1 PM. We saw waterbuck, zebras, elephants, loads of birds and even 2 lions that tried to chase the zebras. That was incredible to see and we got very lucky with our timing. I love coming to these swamps in Tarangire. They are always so pretty and full of wildlife. I would definitely recommend making the trip to the swamps if you can. We carried on up to the top of Tarangire and then headed to Loch Sally. The road took us through big korongos, which are canyons, which often have sand rivers at the bottom. They were very fun to drive through. Luckily Pinky had some power upgrades before the trip, otherwise I would not have been making it up these slopes. I've also now learned how to use low range. We had lunch by 2 massive baobabs just outside the gate of Randeling Community WMA. For me, lunch always consisted of cheese and crackers and some pieces of ham and cucumber. I love a snacky lunch. After lunch, we continued on to Loch Sally through bush and Maasailand. We passed through more Maasai villages, saw Maasai with their cows and waved at the Maasai children. This road was great fun to drive on in the Landys and we were very high up, around 1,500 metres, so we had a great view of the valley and Loch Sally mountain. We reached the Loch Sally camp gate around 5:30 PM. We drove down the hill past baobab trees to the dam, where we saw giraffes, warthogs, impalas and lots of birds. Just past the dam is a sand river, which is where we were camping. Driving through sand was very fun as it was my first time. I had a bit of a wash and we set up camp for the night. There was a brilliant last sunset for our sundowner drinks, and then we had an incredible table set up for us for our final night of the trip. Day 6 was our final day. We woke up to the gorgeous sunshine and had a big English breakfast with all of our leftover food. We had a quick look to see what was at the dam, but there were only a few impala as the dam had dried up so much. We then started our journey home to Arusha. We travelled 103 kilometres via the back roads. The only thing broken on Pinky at this point was the wing mirror, so I was hoping for a strong last day. I discovered I could hold my phone out the window on this day for a slightly better angle, as you will see. It was a nice trip home and we even saw Kilimanjaro pop out at one point. The sun was shining and there was still plenty to see. I never get bored of the landscape and Maasai villages. This route took us through lots of farmland and local villages, and as we got closer to Arusha, the houses got bigger and there were more infrastructures and vehicles and even a new water pump. We passed down through another sand river. There was a track straight up the bank on the other side, but a Maasai was at the top telling us it was too steep to drive up and then we had to go around. We listened to him and went around, but the last car in the convoy went up with no problem, so it would have been fine. We then hit the dustiest roads of the trip with vast views of Maasailand. This is where we started to meet the big trucks, which definitely don't help the road. One car was not happy and was overheating a lot, so we made a few stops, but Pinky was still going strong. We did the final stretch on the tarmac and got home at 1:59 PM just in time for the Grand Prix. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching and coming along. For more videos, subscribe to my channel and follow my Insta for more updates of my adventures with Pinky.